people that are listening on whatever podcasting platform or radio station you are, we thank you for that. Betsey Holmberg here on the program. She's done many things, and unfortunately, I can't read all the stuff. I should say, I can't remember all the stuff she's done off the top of my head. So I'm going to do a little synopsis of what she is and what she's done so far in her life. Betsey Holmberg ran the Global Behavioral Health Service line at McKinsey and Company. It's a consulting firm. I know my political people will know rather McKinsey and Company. Besides that, she's worked at Harvard. She's co-written peer-reviewed academic journals and articles. She's got an amazing story to tell, and she's trained in main. Yeah, I'm struggling today, so I apologize for that. She is trained in many cognitive behavioral therapies and dialects. I'm just going to shut up and let her tell you herself. Betsey Holmberg, thanks so much for coming on. I greatly appreciate your time.
Oh, it's great to be here, Rob. Thank you.
All right, and thanks for putting up with me. Moving again today's program, like I said, for people listening, obviously this is taped. I have been doing some traveling, and I'm pretty exhausted. So just bear with me, everyone listening, and we'll get through this and do a hell of an interview for you guys. So Betsey, let's talk about this a little bit. Excuse me, can you tell the people that are listening for the first time that want to learn more about you, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Just as Rob said, so before I started doing this, I worked at McKinsey and Company, and I served clients all over the globe across the entire essentially industry in mental health, whether it was the hospitals or the insurance programs or Medicaid programs. Super fun work. And before that, I did work at Harvard doing research on self-injury and suicide. And then before that, I got my PhD at Duke, where I also went for undergrad. So I'm a big Blue Devil through and through. And then I got married and had a baby, and then went through the hardest time in my life. So my husband left me after 2 years of marriage, and we then had a 2-year divorce process. And so I struggled during that time, and there were just so many voices from the judge and my lawyers, et cetera, on telling me exactly what I should do. And, they're kind of telling you what you should be as a mom, what you should be as a partner, et cetera. And I got really down and I got really low. And I got to the place of feeling like the world would be better off without me, because I had a judge saying you need to be doing more for your ex and making a better relationship for him with his son. And I was literally doing everything I could to do that. And it just was the straw that, broke the camel's back. And so we get through it. My parents come out. I go on antidepressants. I start to feel better. Awesome. And then 3 years later, I'm trying to titrate off of my antidepressant. I don't want to be on them forever. And every time I do that, I hear these voices come rearing back. And it is, you can't do it. You can't be a good enough mom, when you're going through this. It was just, you can't do this. And so I felt like I had to take a pill. I had to do that in order to function. And I got so fed up. And honestly, I wanted more for my kid. And I went back to my roots and back to the academic literature. And that's when I discovered essentially the science of our thoughts and why we have such a critical negative voice in our heads. And it completely changed my life. And I immediately titrated off of my antidepressant. And I haven't looked back since. And this was such a powerful transformation for me. I mean, I had been to therapy. I had done all the things. None of it really worked forever, and this did. And so then that's where now I am out wanting to bring this to everyone with doing these podcasts. And I'm just going to launch a coaching program for folks who want to dive in and do this in a customized way. And so I'm really excited to be here and tell you more about it.
I heard a little bit about your situation before we did this interview, but that's really insane that that happened to you. I'm sorry that that did happen to you. Can you dive deeper into that? Because there's a lot of stress on, women in general, if they're married or they're not married, raising a kid. Talk about that in general, because a lot of men listening to this that maybe are on the younger side may not know this. the older, the men get that are married or maybe went through a divorce, they're going to know that more so than the younger guys. So just tell the younger viewers that are listening how tough that situation started and just going into it.
I think divorce is a situation that we've normalized in our culture. And to some extent, we shouldn't, because it is a trauma. It is like losing a
Right.
loved one, because when a divorce happens, you lose all of your control. So if the other person says, I'm out, I don't want to do this anymore, there's nothing you can say. You can't fight for it. You have to get divorced. And then you are also forced to go into the legal system. And suddenly, especially if there are kids involved, you have lawyers and judges telling you, where you can live, how much you can see your kid, how, like, what the breakdown of money is going to be. So essentially, you've relinquished all control of your life to these foreign bodies who don't know you at all and don't know the situation. And it's incredibly stressful, but also from a mind perspective. So one thing that this tribal brain does is it cares about in-groups and out-groups. It's trying to keep you in the clan. And so when you get divorced, you are essentially being outgrouped at the most basic level. Your family is saying, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Because that's, you thought this was for life, and then it wasn't. And so to be outgrouped by your own family really does a number on us from a mental health perspective. And so that's where, they do say, oh, it's hard for all parties. But I think that we're not spending enough time and attention looking at how really hard it is to be the one that just gets left. Like it will really do a number on you.
There's a lot of men that are afraid to have therapy. We have this stigma in our, country and our culture in general that if you go and see a therapist, if you cry, if you express any emotion, you're weak, you're a loser, you're, a woman, I guess, and you're not a man. Can you just talk about that? You've talked to businesses, people all over the country in general. Talk about that stigma, why it is, and how we can change that to, open men up to, discuss what's going on in their life because they end up holding it in, and it either leads to, personally, this is my belief, not studies, not anything else. It leads to either suicide, it leads to mental illness, or it leads to a lot of these school shootings, I think. That's personally my opinion.
So this is a classic place where the tribal hurt us, because just what you were saying, like if you immediately, men will label themselves to say, I'm weak, like, oh, I'm such a woman about that. I mean, like, I shouldn't be doing this. All of those labels, that's what the tribal brain loves to do. It loves to label people. So, women are sitting here labeling themselves that they, shouldn't succeed at work, and men are labeling themselves that they shouldn't have emotions. And the other thing the tribal brain cares so much about is hierarchy and what your role is. And so if
Can
a
I
guy,
just jump in about the tribal brain,
yeah,
and I'll let you roll back into this. With that, is that societal stigmas that are that we're getting pushed with, and as far as media, social media in general, or where is
it
this coming from?
starts totally innocent, and then it scans the environment for what the norms are. It scans for what the hierarchy is and what your role is. And so it is getting inputs from your family and what they're saying, from the media, from society, from what you're seeing in movies. I mean, and it catalogs all of that. And one of the things the tribal brain loves to do is label. And it loves to say, you're stupid, you're weak, you can't do it. It like, that is how it talks. And I think it's huge to realize that those thoughts are automatic. You didn't create that. You don't feel like you're weak. It's just your tribal brain looking out at what it's seen in the world, and it's like, oh, you're weak. And it thinks it wants to try to help you act like what you think you need to be acting like for the clan. P.S. This is what's crazy too. Everyone's clan idea is completely different. We all have different experiences. So what one guy thinks of as what the in-group is different from what a girl thinks is what different from what someone else thinks. So So we're all in our own heads making up these stories and criticizing ourselves over nothing. And the thing is that we aren't really the ones criticizing ourselves. It's this survival instinct we have. And so when we start dismissing those thoughts, then for at least for guys in this situation, they can start to take a little better care of themselves. And if they are feeling down, they can go get therapy and not listen to that tribal brain that says you're weak because you did it, you know?
But we'll move forward into this.
Well, actually, I'd love to make one more point on
Yeah, go
that.
ahead. Sure
That is
thing.
to say that the default mode in the tribal brain is its worst when you are stuck in your head believing those thoughts. And so some of the most helpful things you can do is get together with a friend or a therapist, anyone, and
Mhm.
say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And it's our in-person relationships that help us kind of pressure check like what that tribal brain is saying. Your friends can be like, you're being ridiculous. Like, that's not the reason you're not getting any dates. You're wonderful. Keep going. You've got this. Or they can be there if you're like, I'm sad. They're like, I hear you. I've been there. And we use in-person relationships to check the tribal brain and put it away. And
Yeah,
so, if for guys, and I think this is another thing, and I love when Trevor Noah was like, we need to have better guy relationships. We need to be more
agreed.
honest with each other. And because women use their relationships all the time for doing that pressure checking of the default mode, men tend to use their female relationships, so their girlfriends. And so then they're really in the lurch if they break up with a girlfriend. They're losing that place where they get to share some of this stuff. And so to me, yes, if it's therapy, go for it. If it's you have some guy friends you can actually talk to about stuff, go for it. If you have friends that are girls that you can talk to, go for it. But
Yeah.
talking about it will help weaken those thoughts and make them less severe for you.
So Betsy, as we go to the last part, we have teased your website, betseyholmberg.com. With that said, you do have some courses on there. I know you kind of brought some of the aspects of the course into our interview today, but for the viewers that haven't heard about you or researched your website, can you just go a little deeper than that? Because we do want people to hear this valuable information.
Sure. So in the course, I talk about those two brain networks that we talked about earlier, the central executive network and the tribal brain. We go deep into the tribal brain in terms of those priorities, in groups and out groups, hierarchies and roles, and empathy, and talk about all the negative ways that is hurting us and why we have our negative critical thoughts. We talk about how it describes measures and compares. This tribal brain loves to compare. And once you notice it, you'll stop comparing and your life will get a lot easier and happier. And then we also go into techniques for stopping it. So traditionally in our society, we've used things like alcohol and cigarettes to stop this brain and to come from a different place. And now that we know what this is that we're trying to turn off, now we can turn it off in some better ways. So we go into it there. So I'd love for you to come check it out, ask any questions or comments, and look forward to hearing from you guys.
Betsey Holmberg, betseyholmberg.com. Betsy, as we end, what else can people, I guess I should frame it this way. As we end the interview, how can people find out more about you besides the website? Do you have social media, email, whatever it may be?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. So I post mostly on Twitter and Instagram. So follow me there and you'll get all the updates.
All right, Betsey Holmberg, betseyholmberg.com. Thanks so much for your time. I'm looking forward to our next conversation because we did get a lot of good questions and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much, Rob. Talk soon.